The abandoned warehouse on Detroit's east side reeked of rust and desperation, but Maya Chen had nowhere else to go. 8 months pregnant and down to her last $5, she heard the faint whimpering coming from behind a stack of rotting crates. What she found changed everything. A German shepherd barely breathing, nursing 3 tiny puppies on a bed of torn police bulletins. The dog wore a faded K9 unit collar with the name Justice etched in silver. Maya had been a veterinary student before her world collapsed, before the betrayal that left her with nothing. Now her forgotten skills were the only things standing between this police dog family and death. But as Justice recovered, Maya noticed something strange. The dog responded to commands in a language she didn't recognize, and hidden in her collar was a microchip containing files that made Maya's blood run cold. Why would someone abandon a decorated police dog in a place where she was meant to die? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. "Hey, girl," Maya whispered, extending her hands slowly. Justice's ears twitched, but she didn't have the strength to lift her head. Maya could see the dog was severely dehydrated and malnourished. Without intervention, none of them would survive the night. The warehouse offered little in terms of supplies, but Maya had learned to make do with nothing over the past 6 months. She tore strips from her only clean shirt to create makeshift bandages and used an empty bottle she'd found to collect rainwater dripping through the roof. Her veterinary professor's voice echoed in her memory. Sometimes the difference between life and death isn't expensive equipment. It's knowing what to do with what you have. As she worked, Maya studied Justice more carefully. This wasn't just any police dog. The shepherd's build was powerful, her paws large and well-conditioned. Even in her weakened state, there was something alert and intelligent in her dark eyes. The collar bore scratches and wear marks consistent with active duty, but what caught Maya's attention were the fresh scratches around the buckle, as if someone had hastily removed and replaced it recently. The microchip reader Maya had salvaged from her old veterinary clinic was one of the few possessions she'd managed to keep. Battery nearly dead, but functional. When she scanned Justice's collar chip, expecting to find basic identification, her phone screen filled with encrypted files that made her stomach drop. Photos of police officers, financial records, meeting locations with timestamps, and names. Names Maya recognized from news reports about corruption investigations that had suddenly gone quiet. Her baby kicked sharply, as if sensing her spike in adrenaline. Maya pressed her hand to her belly, mind racing. Justice wasn't just abandoned, she was hidden. Someone had tried to erase evidence by eliminating the dog who might have witnessed something she shouldn't have. A car door slammed in the distance, echoing through the industrial wasteland. Maya's pulse quickened. Nobody came to this part of the city after dark unless they had something to hide. She quickly pocketed her phone and gathered the puppies closer to Justice, who had managed to lift her head at the sound. Footsteps crunched on gravel outside. Maya held her breath, crouched behind the crates. Justice's ears stood at attention despite her weakness, and Maya noticed the dog's entire demeanor had changed. This wasn't fear. It was alertness, training taking over. "You sure this is where the handler said he'd meet?" A gruff voice called out. "Collins said Warehouse 7. This is it." Another voice, younger, nervous. "But his car ain't here. Collins ain't coming." "Haven't you been paying attention?" Maya's blood turned to ice. They were talking about Justice's handler. Past tense. The footsteps moved closer to the building. Maya could see flashlight beams cutting through the broken windows, sweeping systematically across the warehouse floor. They were searching for something. Justice made a low sound in her throat, not quite a growl, but a warning. Maya placed a gentle hand on the dog's neck, feeling the tension in her muscles. Even injured and exhausted, Justice was ready to protect her puppies. "Wait," the younger voice said. "You hear that?" The footsteps stopped. Maya held her breath, one hand on Justice, the other protectively over her belly. The puppies had fallen asleep, their tiny bodies warm against their mother's side. "Probably just rats," the older man said after a moment. "Come on, we're wasting time. If there was anything here, it would have been found by now. The voices faded as the men moved away, but Maya remained frozen in place for another 20 minutes before daring to move. Justice's eyes tracked her movements, and Maya realized the dog understood exactly what had just happened. Looking down at the 3 vulnerable puppies, Maya made a decision that would change everything. She couldn't leave them here, and she couldn't walk away from what she'd discovered. Justice had protected secrets worth killing for, and now those secrets were Maya's responsibility. The abandoned warehouse offered little protection from the October wind, but Maya had learned to make the best of whatever shelter she could find. She'd been living rough for 3 months now, ever since the eviction notice had forced her from the cramped studio apartment she could no longer afford. At 7 months pregnant, finding work had become impossible, and the waiting lists for assistance stretched longer than her dwindling hope. She pressed her back against the concrete wall, pulling her threadbare jacket tighter around her swollen belly. The baby kicked restlessly, as if sensing her anxiety about the approaching storm clouds. Maya whispered soothing words, though she wondered if the child could feel her fear through the thin barrier of skin and muscle. A sharp whine echoed through the cavernous space, making her freeze. She'd chosen this particular warehouse because it seemed abandoned, free from the dangers that lurked in more populated areas. The sound came again, weaker this time, followed by tiny mewling cries that made her heart clench. Following the sounds deeper into the building, Maya discovered a German shepherd lying behind a stack of rotting pallets. The dog's breathing was labored, her dark eyes glazed with exhaustion and pain. 3 tiny puppies, barely days old, nursed weakly at her side while she struggled to lift her massive head. "Oh, sweetheart," Maya breathed, approaching slowly with her hands visible. She'd always had a way with animals, even as a child when her family moved from shelter to shelter. Animals understood desperation in ways humans often couldn't. The mother dog's tail twitched slightly, lacking the energy for a proper wag. Maya noticed the faded police insignia on a collar that was far too expensive for a stray. This was no ordinary abandoned dog. The nameplate read Justice, and beneath it, a badge number that had been deliberately scratched out. Justice's breathing became more labored as Maya knelt beside her. Blood stained the concrete beneath the dog's hindquarters, and her nose felt warm and dry. Maya had helped birth enough puppies at the animal shelter where she'd volunteered during better times to recognize the signs of complications from delivery. "You're not going to make it, are you, girl?" Maya's voice cracked as she gently stroked Justice's head. The dog's eyes found hers, and in them, Maya saw a desperate plea that transcended species. As if understanding the gravity of the moment, Justice nudged her puppies closer to Maya with her snout. The message was clear: take care of them. Maya gathered the warm, squirming bodies against her chest, feeling their tiny hearts beating rapidly against her skin. "I promise," she whispered to Justice, whose breathing had become even more shallow. "I'll keep them safe." Justice's eyes closed for the final time, just as the storm broke overhead, rain drumming against the warehouse's broken skylights. Maya found herself alone with 3 helpless puppies, no supplies, and nowhere to go. The irony wasn't lost on her that she could barely take care of herself, let alone 3 newborns who would need feeding every 2 hours. She fashioned a makeshift nest from her extra sweater and settled the puppies inside her jacket, grateful for their warmth against the growing cold. As she prepared to search for supplies, something caught her attention. Tucked beneath Justice's collar was a small memory card, so well hidden she almost missed it. Maya turned the tiny device over in her palm, wondering what information a police dog would be carrying. Justice's badge number had been deliberately obscured, and now this hidden card suggested something far more complex than a simple case of abandonment. The puppies whimpered, bringing her back to immediate concerns. She needed formula, bottles, and proper shelter before the temperature dropped further. Maya slipped the memory card into her pocket and wrapped the puppies more securely against her body. Venturing into the storm, she made her way toward the 24-hour convenience store she'd noticed several blocks away. The clerk, a tired-looking woman in her 50s, barely glanced up from her magazine when Maya entered, dripping and desperate. "Excuse me," Maya began, approaching the counter with as much dignity as she could muster. "I found some abandoned puppies. Do you know where I might find puppy formula this late?" The woman looked up then, taking in Maya's obvious pregnancy and bedraggled appearance. Something shifted in her expression. "There's a veterinary supply store about 10 blocks north, but they're closed until morning." She paused, studying Maya's face. "You look like you could use some help yourself." "The puppies are my priority right now," Maya said firmly. The clerk disappeared into a back room and returned with a carton of milk and a small bottle with a makeshift nipple. "It's not ideal, but it'll keep them alive until morning. No charge." Maya felt tears prick her eyes at this unexpected kindness. "Thank you." As she prepared to leave, the clerk called after her. "There's a 24-hour laundromat 3 blocks east, warm, dry, and the owner doesn't mind people staying overnight if they're quiet." Walking back into the storm, Maya clutched the puppies closer, feeling their trust like a sacred responsibility. She had no idea that the memory card in her pocket contained evidence of corruption that reached the highest levels of the police department, or that powerful people were already searching for the decorated K-9 officer who had disappeared with devastating proof of their crimes. For now, all that mattered was keeping 3 innocent lives safe through the night. The abandoned warehouse on 5th Street had been Maya's sanctuary for 3 weeks now, ever since she'd discovered the broken loading dock door that nobody seemed to care about fixing. She'd fashioned a small nest in the corner using cardboard and an old tarp, positioning it behind a stack of forgotten shipping containers that blocked the view from any casual observers. It wasn't much, but it was dry and relatively warm, which was more than she'd had in months. Maya pressed her hand against her swollen belly, feeling the baby shift restlessly inside her. 7 months along now, and still no real plan for what came next. The thought made her stomach clench with anxiety, so she pushed it away like she always did, focusing instead on the immediate problems she could actually solve. The German Shepherd had been watching her for the better part of an hour from across the warehouse floor, those intelligent brown eyes never leaving Maya's face. 3 tiny puppies nursed contentedly at the dog's side, their eyes still closed, bodies no bigger than Maya's fist. The mother had shown up 2 nights ago, somehow finding her way through the same broken door Maya used, carrying each puppy one by one to safety. Maya had tried to shoo them away at first. She barely had enough food to keep herself alive, let alone feed a family of dogs. But something about the way the mother looked at her, desperate, protective, almost pleading, had stopped her cold. There was recognition there, one survivor acknowledging another. Yesterday, Maya had noticed the collar half hidden beneath the dog's thick fur. Police K-9 unit was stamped in faded letters, along with a name, Duchess. The revelation had sent Maya's mind spinning. What was a police dog doing here, abandoned and alone with newborn puppies? Now, as evening shadows stretched across the warehouse floor, Duchess rose carefully from her makeshift bed and approached Maya with slow, deliberate steps. The dog had been maintaining her distance since arriving, accepting the scraps of food Maya offered, but never coming close enough to touch. "Hey, girl," Maya whispered, extending her hand palm up. "I'm not going to hurt you." Duchess sniffed cautiously, then sat down just out of arm's reach. Up close, Maya could see the dog was thin, too thin for a nursing mother. Her dark coat was matted and dirty, and there was an old scar running along her left shoulder that looked like it might have come from a knife or broken glass. Maya reached into her backpack and pulled out half of a gas station sandwich she'd been saving for breakfast. Turkey and Swiss on white bread, nothing fancy, but protein was protein. She tore off small pieces and tossed them gently toward Duchess, who gulped them down gratefully. "You're starving, aren't you?" Maya said softly. "Welcome to the club." As if responding to her voice, Duchess moved a step closer. Maya held perfectly still, letting the dog set the pace. Trust was a fragile thing when you'd been living on the streets. Maya understood that better than most. The baby kicked hard against her ribs, making Maya gasp and shift position. Duchess immediately went rigid, ears pricked forward, studying Maya with new intensity. Then something extraordinary happened. The dog moved closer and gently rested her massive head against Maya's belly. Maya felt tears prick her eyes. It had been so long since anyone had shown her kindness, even this wordless gesture from a stray dog. She carefully placed her hand on Duchess's head, stroking the soft fur behind her ears. "We're both in trouble, aren't we?" she murmured. "Both of us just trying to keep our babies safe." Duchess looked up at her with those soulful eyes, and Maya could swear she saw understanding there. The dog stayed pressed against her for several more minutes before returning to her puppies, but something had shifted between them. An alliance had been formed. Over the next few hours, as darkness settled over the warehouse, Maya found herself studying the dog more carefully. Despite her obvious hunger and exhaustion, Duchess moved with trained precision. She positioned herself strategically between her puppies and the warehouse entrance, ears constantly swiveling to catch the slightest sound. This wasn't just maternal instinct, this was professional vigilance. What had happened to Duchess's handler? Police dogs didn't just abandon their posts. They were loyal to a fault, trained to work until they dropped. For Duchess to be here, alone and desperate, something terrible must have occurred. Maya's hand found the small flip phone buried at the bottom of her backpack. She'd lifted it from a distracted businessman's coat pocket 3 days ago, telling herself she'd only use it for emergencies. Maybe she should call the police, report finding their missing K9 unit. It would be the right thing to do. But as she watched Duchess nuzzle her vulnerable puppies, Maya hesitated. The dog had chosen to come here, to this hidden place far from the world that had failed to protect her. Maybe there was a reason for that. Maybe, like Maya herself, Duchess had learned that sometimes the authorities couldn't be trusted. Maybe they were both running from something. The puppies were growing stronger each day, their eyes now open and curious about the world beyond their cardboard home. Maya watched them tumble over each other, their tiny barks echoing through the abandoned warehouse as dawn light filtered through broken windows. Luna remained protective but was beginning to trust Maya completely, often resting her massive head on Maya's lap while nursing. 3 weeks had passed since Maya found them, and she'd fallen into a routine that felt surprisingly normal despite their precarious circumstances. She'd venture out each morning to scavenge for food and supplies, always taking different routes, always watching for anyone who might be following. The paranoia felt justified when she considered the implications of Detective Torres's warning. On this particular morning, Maya noticed something different about Luna's behavior. The German Shepherd was agitated, pacing near the window, and occasionally letting out low whines. Her ears were constantly perked, rotating toward sounds Maya couldn't hear. "What is it, girl?" Maya whispered, moving closer to peer through the grimy glass. The street below appeared empty except for the usual urban debris, but Luna's anxiety was contagious. Maya gathered the puppies into their carrier despite their sleepy protests and prepared to move to one of her backup locations across town. As she lifted her backpack, Maya heard the sound that had been troubling Luna, the low rumble of multiple vehicles approaching slowly. Through a gap in the boarded windows, she watched 3 black SUVs pull up outside the warehouse. Her blood turned cold as men in tactical gear emerged, moving with the precision of a military unit. "We need to go," Maya breathed, scooping up the puppy carrier while Luna fell into step beside her. They moved toward the rear exit Maya had scouted weeks earlier, but the sound of boots on metal stairs told her they were already too late. The team was entering through multiple points, coordinating their approach with hand signals she could see through the skeletal framework of the building's upper levels. Maya's mind raced. The warehouse was large, filled with machinery and storage areas that created a maze-like interior, but these men clearly knew what they were doing. She needed to think like someone who had nothing to lose, because that's exactly what she was. Clutching the puppies close, Maya led Luna deeper into the warehouse's industrial bowels. The building had once housed a textile factory, and massive looms still dominated the floor space, creating natural barriers and hiding spots. She could hear voices now, professional and calm, directing the search. Thermals picking up movement in the northeast section. "Copy that. Team 2, circle around." Maya realized they had equipment that made hiding nearly impossible, Her only advantage was knowing the building's layout better than they did. She'd spent hours exploring every corner, every exit, every structural weakness. Moving carefully between the machinery, Maya reached a section where part of the floor had collapsed years ago, creating an opening to the basement level. She'd explored down there before but had avoided staying because of the flooding. Now the water might be their salvation. Luna seemed to understand the gravity of their situation. The dog moved silently despite her size, occasionally looking back to ensure Maya was keeping up. The puppies, perhaps sensing their mother's tension, remained unusually quiet in their carrier. The basement was partially flooded, just as Maya remembered. Water came up to her knees, cold and murky, but it would mask their heat signature. She waded toward the far end, where she'd previously discovered a drainage tunnel that connected to the city's storm system. Above them, she could hear the search intensifying. Footsteps moved back and forth, and she caught fragments of radio chatter echoing through the building's skeleton. No sign of them on this level. Check the basement. She's got to be somewhere. Maya reached the drainage tunnel just as flashlight beams began penetrating the basement from above. The opening was narrow, barely wide enough for her shoulders, but it was their only option. She pushed the puppy carrier through first, then coaxed Luna to follow. The German Shepherd hesitated, her training probably telling her not to enter such a confined space. But Maya's gentle insistence and the approaching voices convinced her. Luna squeezed through with surprising grace for such a large dog. Maya pulled herself into the tunnel just as boots splashed into the water behind them. The drainage system was a nightmare of concrete tubes and intersecting passages, but it led away from the warehouse toward the river. She'd explored part of it during her first week in the area, never imagining she'd need it for escape. They crawled through darkness for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. The puppies whimpered softly, and Maya whispered reassurances she wasn't sure she believed herself. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit faded, replaced by the steady drip of water and their own labored breathing. When they finally emerged near the riverbank, Maya's hands were shaking. Luna immediately began checking on her puppies while Maya tried to process what had just happened. Someone had found them despite all her precautions. The search had been too coordinated, too professional to be anything but official. Detective Torres's warnings were proving more accurate than Maya had hoped. The abandoned warehouse on 5th Street had become home in ways Maya never imagined possible. She'd found it 3 weeks ago, after the encounter with the scarred man had forced her to abandon the overpass. The building's broken windows let in enough light during the day, and the corner she'd claimed stayed relatively dry when it rained. Most importantly, it had multiple exits, something that had become crucial since people started watching her. Maya sat cross-legged on the pile of blankets she'd gathered, watching Luna nurse her puppies. The mother dog's ribs still showed, despite Maya sharing every scrap of food she could find, but there was something regal about the way Luna carried herself. Even now, exhausted from feeding 3 growing puppies, her ears remained alert, always listening. "You were somebody important, weren't you, girl?" Maya whispered, running her hand along Luna's scarred flank. The dog's tail thumped once against the concrete floor. The puppies had grown considerably in the past weeks. Their eyes had opened, revealing startling intelligence, and they'd begun to move around more. The smallest one, whom Maya had started calling Scout, seemed particularly attached to her, often falling asleep against her leg. The largest, built like his mother, with the same alert bearing, she'd named Thor. The middle puppy, a female with distinctive white markings on her chest, had earned the name Stella for the star-shaped patch above her left eye. Maya had tried to research Luna's background at the public library, but searching for missing police dogs had yielded nothing useful. Whatever had happened to Luna's handler, it wasn't making the news. That silence felt deliberate, calculated. The sound of footsteps on gravel outside made Luna's head snap up. Maya felt her heart rate spike as she recognized the pattern. 2 sets of feet, moving carefully, trying to be quiet. She'd learned to distinguish between the random sounds of urban decay and purposeful movement. This was purposeful. Moving silently, Maya gathered the 3 puppies into the canvas bag she'd found behind a pet store. They squirmed but didn't cry, somehow sensing the need for quiet. Luna rose smoothly, positioning herself between Maya and the warehouse entrance. Male voices drifted through the broken windows, too low to make out words but close enough to send ice through Maya's veins. She'd thought changing locations would buy her safety, but clearly she'd been wrong. These weren't random homeless people or urban explorers. The careful way they moved, the professional rhythm of their search, these were the people the scarred man had warned her about. Maya crept toward the back exit she'd scouted weeks ago, Luna padding silently beside her. The mother dog's military training was evident in how she moved. No wasted motion, absolute quiet. Even carrying the bag of puppies, Maya felt clumsy compared to Luna's fluid grace. The voices grew closer. Through a crack in the wall, Maya caught a glimpse of 2 men in dark clothing. One was speaking into a radio, his words barely audible. Checking the warehouse now. No sign yet, but there are fresh tracks. Maya's blood ran cold. They were tracking her. She reached the back exit, a gap in the wall where vandals had removed several boards. It was barely wide enough for her to squeeze through, but it led to an alley that connected to the storm drain system she'd been mapping for weeks. Urban survival meant always having an escape route. As she prepared to slip through the opening, one of the puppies, Thor, let out a small whine. Maya froze, pressing her hand gently over the bag's opening. The voices inside the warehouse stopped. Did you hear that? Could be rats. That wasn't rats. Footsteps quickened, moving in her direction. Maya squeezed through the gap, feeling splinters catch on her jacket. Luna followed with liquid smoothness, barely disturbing the hanging boards. They were in the alley now, 20 feet from the storm drain entrance, but the men would be at the back wall within seconds. Maya ran, no longer caring about noise. Behind her, she heard shouting as the men discovered the exit. Luna kept pace easily despite her condition, and Maya realized the dog was deliberately staying close rather than using her full speed. They reached the storm drain just as flashlight beams swept the alley behind them. Maya dropped into the concrete tunnel, landing hard but keeping the puppy bag secure. Luna followed with a graceful leap that spoke of extensive agility training. The tunnel was dark and smelled of rust and stagnant water, but Maya had prepared for this. She pulled a small flashlight from her pocket and began moving through the maze of passages she'd memorized. Behind them, she could hear the men arguing about whether to follow. After what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, Maya stopped in a junction where 3 tunnels met. Her breathing was ragged, her heart pounding, but they appeared to be safe for now. She opened the bag to check on the puppies. All 3 were alert but unharmed. Luna sat beside her, panting lightly, and for the first time since Maya had found her, the dog looked directly into her eyes. There was something almost human in that gaze, gratitude, but also apology. As if Luna knew that her presence had brought danger into Maya's already precarious world. The abandoned warehouse felt different now that Maya knew she wasn't just hiding from the elements anymore. She was hiding from people who killed cops and buried evidence. The puppies had grown noticeably in just a few days, their eyes still sealed shut but their tiny bodies more robust. Luna watched them constantly, her ears pricked at every sound from outside. Maya sat cross-legged on the sleeping bag, studying the contents of the evidence bag she'd found in Luna's vest. The flash drive felt impossibly small to contain secrets worth killing for. The documents were mostly incident reports and financial records she couldn't fully understand. But Detective Rodriguez's name appeared frequently alongside dates and case numbers. A soft knock echoed through the warehouse, and Luna immediately stood, positioning herself between the entrance and the puppies. Maya's heart hammered as she quickly stuffed the evidence back into the bag. "Maya, it's Sarah from the clinic." Relief flooded through her as she recognized the veterinarian's voice. Maya had given Sarah this address when she'd asked about follow-up care for the puppies, though she'd been vague about her living situation. "Just a second," Maya called, hiding the evidence bag under her backpack before opening the door. Sarah stood in the doorway holding a large bag and wearing jeans instead of her usual scrubs. Her expression shifted from professional concern to something deeper as she took in the makeshift living space. "I brought supplies for the puppies," Sarah said carefully, "and some food. For all of you." Luna approached cautiously, sniffing Sarah's extended hand before allowing a gentle pat. The puppies squeaked softly from their box, and Sarah's face softened. "They're doing well," Sarah observed, kneeling beside them. "But Maya, this isn't safe. Not for you or them. Winter's coming, and this place—" She gestured at the concrete walls and broken windows. "I know it's not ideal," Maya said, defensive, "but it's temporary, until I can figure something else out." Sarah sat back on her heels, studying Maya's face. "There are shelters, programs for pregnant women. You don't have to do this alone. Shelters don't take dogs, especially not 4 of them." Maya's hand instinctively moved to her belly. "And I won't separate them. They need each other." "What aren't you telling me?" Sarah's voice was gentle but persistent. "Most people would surrender the puppies to a rescue. You're risking your health, your safety, your baby's safety. Why?" Maya felt the weight of the evidence bag pressing against her back where she'd hidden it. She wanted to trust Sarah, but Detective Rodriguez had probably trusted someone too, and now he was dead. "Sometimes doing the right thing isn't safe," Maya said finally. Before Sarah could respond, Luna's ears perked forward, and she moved to the window, pressing her nose against the dirty glass. A low growl rumbled in her chest. Maya joined her at the window and peered out. A dark sedan was parked across the street, engine running. 2 men sat in the front seats, and one was holding what looked like a photograph. "We'd to leave," Maya whispered, stepping back from the window. "Now." "What? Why?" Sarah looked confused, but something in Maya's tone made her start gathering the supplies. "There are people looking for Luna. Bad people." Maya was already stuffing her few belongings into the backpack. "They killed her handler, and they'll kill anyone who gets in their way." Sarah's eyes widened, but she didn't hesitate. She lifted the box containing the 3 puppies while Maya clipped Luna's leash. They moved toward the back exit Maya had scouted days ago. The alley behind the warehouse was narrow and cluttered with dumpsters. Maya led them through a gap in a chain-link fence into an adjacent lot overgrown with weeds. Behind them, she heard car doors slam. "My car's 2 blocks north," Sarah whispered, as they crouched behind an abandoned truck. Luna pressed against Maya's legs, her body tense but silent. The puppies had quieted as if sensing the danger. They moved through shadows and side streets, using parked cars and buildings for cover. Maya's pregnancy made her clumsy, and twice Sarah had to steady her when she stumbled. The veterinarian didn't ask questions, just kept pace and protected the puppies. When they reached Sarah's Subaru, Maya hesitated with her hand on the passenger door. "I can't ask you to get involved in this," she said. "These people are dangerous." Sarah was already buckling the puppy box into the back seat. "I became a vet because I believe in protecting innocent lives. That includes you and your baby." She met Maya's eyes over the roof of the car. "Besides, I think Luna's already decided she trusts me." The German Shepherd was indeed watching Sarah with calm acceptance, no longer viewing her as a threat. As they drove away, Maya saw the dark sedan in the side mirror, circling the warehouse. They'd been minutes away from being caught. "Where are we going?" Maya asked. Sarah's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Somewhere safe. My cabin upstate. We can figure out the rest from there." The rain hammered against the warehouse windows as Maya crouched beside Luna, who was nursing her 3 remaining puppies. The mother dog's breathing had steadied over the past 2 days, but Maya could see the wariness in her amber eyes, the same look Maya caught in her own reflection whenever she passed a mirror. Detective Rodriguez had left her with more questions than answers, and the flash drive felt like it was burning a hole in her jacket pocket. She'd made copies, hidden them in 3 different locations throughout the abandoned district. Trust no one, he'd said, but how could she navigate this alone? A soft whimper drew her attention back to the puppies. The smallest one, barely the size of her palm, was struggling to reach Luna's milk. Maya gently guided the pup into position, marveling at how something so fragile could be at the center of something so dangerous. "What did your handler know, Luna?" she whispered, stroking the dog's scarred head. "What got him killed?" As if understanding the question, Luna's ears perked up. She struggled to her feet, favoring her injured leg, and padded toward the warehouse's main entrance. A low growl rumbled in her throat. Maya's blood chilled. She quickly gathered the puppies into the padded box she'd fashioned from old blankets and cardboard, then followed Luna's gaze toward the grimy windows. 3 black SUVs were pulling up outside, their engines purring like predators. Her mind raced through escape routes. The back exit led to an alley, but they'd likely have it covered. The roof access was too exposed. The storm drain system beneath the warehouse was her best bet, but she'd never attempted it with Luna and the puppies. Men in dark suits emerged from the vehicles, their movements coordinated and professional. Maya caught a glimpse of weapons beneath their jackets. These weren't regular cops. Luna's growl intensified, and Maya realized the dog was positioning herself between the entrance and the puppies, ready to fight despite her injuries. The fierce loyalty broke Maya's heart. She'd seen enough violence, enough loss. "Not this time, girl," Maya whispered, scooping up the puppy box. "We're all getting out of here." She led Luna toward the maintenance hatch she'd discovered during her first night in the warehouse. The metal cover was heavy, but adrenaline gave her strength. Below, she could hear water rushing through the old storm system. The warehouse's main door exploded inward just as Maya lowered herself into the tunnel. Luna hesitated at the opening, looking back toward the noise. Maya's heart clenched. The dog's training was telling her to engage, to protect and serve. "Luna, come," Maya commanded, using the firm tone she'd heard Rodriguez use. To her relief, Luna responded, carefully dropping into the tunnel just as flashlight beams swept across the warehouse floor above. The storm drain was ankle-deep in rushing water, and Maya struggled to keep the puppy box dry while helping Luna navigate the slippery concrete. Behind them, she could hear shouting, then the distinctive whine of search dogs. They had maybe 10 minutes before the pursuers figured out their escape route. The tunnel branched ahead, and Maya chose the path that led toward the old industrial district. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, "Warehouse compromised. Meet at the address I'm sending. Come alone." Ah, Rodriguez. But how had he known? Was he watching her, or was this a trap? Luna suddenly stopped, her body rigid with alertness. In the distance, Maya could hear the echo of boots splashing through water. They were being followed. She made a desperate decision, climbing up through a maintenance shaft that led to the street level. Rain soaked them instantly, but they were in an alley 3 blocks from the warehouse. Maya pulled out her phone and called the only cab company that operated in this part of town, praying they'd pick up a soaked woman with an injured dog and a box of puppies. 15 minutes later, they were in the back of a beaten taxi heading toward the address Rodriguez had sent. The driver, a grizzled man who'd clearly seen everything, didn't ask questions when Maya offered him double the fare. The address led to a 24-hour veterinary clinic in a part of town Maya had never seen, middle-class neighborhoods with actual streetlights and maintained sidewalks. Through the window, she could see Rodriguez pacing inside. "This could be a trap," she murmured to Luna, who was watching the clinic intently. But the puppies needed medical attention, and Maya was exhausted from running. As they approached the entrance, Rodriguez opened the door. His face was grim, and Maya noticed a fresh bandage on his left hand. "They got to your warehouse 20 minutes after I left you," he said without preamble. "Someone's been tracking you, and it's not through any technology I can detect." He looked down at Luna, and something clicked in his expression. "Unless... Maya, has Luna been acting strange? Leading you places, showing unusual awareness of your surroundings?" Maya nodded slowly. "It's like she knows things before they happen." Rodriguez's face darkened. "Because she does. That's why they want her back so badly." The abandoned warehouse felt different in the pre-dawn hours, shadows shifting with an urgency that made Luna's skin crawl. She'd barely slept, her mind churning over Marcus's revelations about the conspiracy that had claimed Officer Hendricks's life. The puppies sensed her unease, whimpering softly from their makeshift bed as she paced the concrete floor. Stella lifted her head, ears pricked forward, then rose to her feet with a low growl. Luna froze, following the dog's intense gaze toward the boarded windows. Through a gap in the plywood, she caught the faint glint of chrome, vehicles moving slowly through the industrial district, their headlights cutting deliberate patterns through the darkness. "They found us," she whispered, her hand instinctively moving to her swollen belly. The baby kicked as if responding to her fear. Moving quickly but quietly, Luna gathered the puppies into their carrier while Stella maintained her alert stance at the window. She'd prepared for this possibility, keeping their few belongings in a duffel bag that could be grabbed at a moment's notice. The encrypted flash drive Marcus had given her was secured in a hidden pocket of her jacket, its weight feeling far heavier than its actual size. The sound of car doors slamming echoed through the empty streets. Luna counted at least 3 vehicles, which meant too many people to be anything but official. She pulled out the burner phone Marcus had left, her fingers trembling as she typed a quick message. "They're here." Moving to backup location. The warehouse had 2 exits, the main entrance she'd been using and a service door that led to an alley behind the building. Luna chose the alley, shouldering the duffel bag while carrying the puppy carrier. Stella padded silently beside her, every muscle coiled for action. They slipped through the service door just as heavy footsteps echoed from the main entrance. Luna could hear voices, professional and clipped, coordinating their search. She recognized the tone from her years on the streets, law enforcement, but whether legitimate or corrupt remained unclear. The alley stretched before them, a narrow canyon between towering brick walls. Luna moved as quickly as her pregnancy allowed, the puppy's carrier bumping against her hip with each step. Behind them, the voices grew louder, more urgent. Someone had discovered their sleeping area. "Check the perimeter," a man's voice commanded. "She can't have gone far." Luna's heart hammered as she reached the mouth of the alley. The backup location Marcus had identified was 8 blocks away, an abandoned subway tunnel entrance hidden behind a construction barrier. In her condition, carrying the puppies, it might as well have been 8 miles. Stella suddenly stopped, her body rigid with tension. Luna followed her gaze and saw a figure emerge from a doorway ahead of them, blocking their path. The man was tall, broad-shouldered, with the unmistakable bearing of law enforcement. But when he stepped into the pale light of a street lamp, Luna saw Marcus's face. "This way," he said urgently, gesturing toward a narrow gap between buildings. "I've got a car 2 blocks over." They moved through a maze of service alleys and forgotten passages, Marcus leading them away from the main streets where the other vehicles were conducting their search. Luna's breathing grew labored, her body protesting the sustained exertion. The puppies had gone silent in their carrier, pressed together in sleepy confusion. "How did they find us so fast?" Luna gasped as they paused in the shadow of a loading dock. "Someone's been monitoring police frequencies," Marcus replied, checking his watch. "They intercepted communications about Hendrick's case being reopened. The corruption goes deeper than we thought. They have people everywhere." A helicopter's distant thrum reached their ears, growing steadily louder. Marcus cursed under his breath. "They're bringing in air support. We need to move now." The next 10 minutes blurred together in a haze of fear and determination. They reached Marcus's unmarked sedan just as searchlights began sweeping the area behind them. Luna collapsed into the passenger seat. The puppy carrier clutched protectively in her arms while Stella jumped into the back. Marcus started the engine and pulled away from the curb with deliberate calm, avoiding any sudden movements that might attract attention. In the distance, Luna could see the helicopter circling the warehouse district, its searchlight probing every shadow. "Where are we going?" she asked, finally allowing herself to breathe. "Somewhere they won't think to look," Marcus replied, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "But Luna, you need to understand. After tonight, there's no going back to hiding. They know you exist, which means they'll never stop hunting you. We have to take this all the way to the end." Luna looked down at the puppies sleeping peacefully in the carrier, their tiny forms trusting and vulnerable. Then she felt her own baby stir within her, another innocent life depending on her choices. The weight of responsibility settled on her shoulders like a mantle she couldn't remove. "Then we finish it," she said quietly, watching the city lights blur past the window. "Whatever it takes." The abandoned subway tunnel felt like a tomb as Maya pressed her back against the cold concrete wall, listening to the echo of footsteps above. 3 days had passed since she'd fled the warehouse with the puppies, and the weight of Marcus's flash drive seemed to burn through her jacket pocket with every heartbeat. Luna's ears twitched at every sound, her maternal instincts on high alert as the 4 puppies nursed contentedly, oblivious to the danger surrounding them. Maya envied their innocence. Her own baby kicked restlessly, as if sensing her anxiety through the thin walls of her womb. The beam of her dying flashlight illuminated Marcus's journal, which she'd been studying obsessively. His final entries painted a picture of corruption so deep it made her stomach churn. Detective Raymond Kowalski wasn't just dirty, he was the linchpin in a network that included 3 city council members, a federal judge, and at least 6 other officers. They'd been trafficking drugs through evidence lockups, selling confiscated weapons to gang members, and eliminating anyone who threatened their operation, including Marcus. Maya's fingers traced over his last entry. "If something happens to me, Luna knows." Trained her to respond to specific evidence markers. The puppies, they might carry her genetic memory of scent training, could be the only proof left. A sharp whistle echoed through the tunnel, and Maya's blood froze. It was the same pattern she'd heard before the warehouse shooting. They'd found her. She stuffed the journal into her bag and gathered the puppies, their tiny whimpers muffled against her chest. Luna stood immediately, her body tense and ready. Maya had learned to read the dogs' signals over their weeks together, and everything about Luna's posture screamed danger. "Come on, girl," Maya whispered, creeping deeper into the tunnel network. The flashlight flickered and died, plunging them into absolute darkness. Moving by touch alone, Maya felt her way along the tunnel wall, her heart hammering as the sound of voices grew closer. Male voices, at least 3 of them, coordinating a search pattern with military precision. "Check every alcove," one commanded. "She can't have gone far with all those dogs." Maya recognized the voice, Detective Kowalski. The man who'd killed Marcus and was now hunting her with the same ruthless determination. A narrow maintenance shaft appeared on her left, barely wide enough for her pregnant form. She squeezed inside, pulling Luna and the puppies with her, just as the first sweep of flashlight beams pierced the darkness behind them. The shaft led to an old electrical room that reeked of rust and stagnant water. Maya huddled in the corner, covering the puppies to muffle their sounds, while Luna positioned herself protectively in front of them. "She's down here somewhere," Kowalski's voice carried through the walls. "The homeless camps reported seeing her with the dogs. 20,000 to whoever brings me that flash drive. 20,000. Maya's mind reeled at the price on her head. That was more money than she'd seen in her entire life, and now it represented her death warrant. One of the puppies, the smallest male with Marcus's distinctive white markings, began to whimper. Maya gently stroked his head, and something remarkable happened. Luna moved closer and began grooming the puppy with deliberate, rhythmic licks. The whimpering stopped, but more importantly, Maya noticed something else. Luna was responding to specific scents on the puppy's fur. She'd lick, pause, and then move to a different spot, as if following an invisible map. Maya remembered Marcus's note about genetic memory and felt a spark of desperate hope. The searching voices moved past their hiding spot, but Maya knew they'd be back. Kowalski wouldn't give up easily, and she couldn't hide in subway tunnels forever. Her baby was due in less than 6 weeks, and she needed medical care, proper shelter, and food. But she also needed to survive long enough to expose the truth. When the voices faded, Maya carefully emerged from the electrical room. Her phone had 1 bar of signal and 12% battery, enough for 1 call if she was lucky. She thought of Detective Sarah Chen, the one person Marcus had mentioned as trustworthy in his journal. But what if Marcus had been wrong? What if Chen was part of the conspiracy too? Luna nudged her hand and Maya looked down to see the mother dog staring at her with those intelligent, amber eyes that seemed to understand everything. In that moment, Maya made her choice. She couldn't keep running. The corruption would continue, more people would die, and Marcus's sacrifice would mean nothing. She had to take the risk, had to trust someone, even if it meant walking into a trap. Maya dialed Chen's number, her finger hovering over the call button as the puppies stirred in her lap. Luna watched her expectantly, as if waiting for her human to finally make the right decision. She pressed call. The abandoned warehouse felt different in the pre-dawn darkness, every shadow seeming to pulse with hidden threats. Maya pressed herself against the cold concrete wall, listening for any sound that didn't belong. Beside her, Luna remained perfectly still, her ears swiveling like radar dishes. The three puppies huddled close, somehow sensing the tension that crackled through the air. It had been 2 days since Captain Rodriguez's warning, and Maya hadn't slept more than an hour at a stretch. Every creak of settling metal, every distant car engine made her pulse spike. She'd moved their makeshift shelter 3 times within the warehouse, always staying near the emergency exit she'd found on her first night here. The burner phone buzzed against her ribs. Maya's breath caught as she read Sarah's message, package ready for pickup. Same place, 1 hour. Maya closed her eyes, weighing her options. The flash drive containing the evidence from Detective Morrison's hidden files was ready, but venturing out meant exposure. Still, they couldn't hide forever. The conspiracy Sarah had uncovered was bigger than they'd imagined, reaching into the mayor's office and beyond. Without that evidence, Morrison's death would remain just another line of duty casualty. "Come on, girl," Maya whispered to Luna. "Time to be heroes again." She fashioned a carrier from an old jacket for the puppies, securing them close to her chest. Luna padded silently beside her as they made their way through the maze of abandoned machinery toward the exit. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of rain and distant exhaust fumes. The coffee shop where they'd arranged to meet Sarah was 6 blocks away, but Maya took a circuitous route, doubling back twice and cutting through an alley that gave her a clear view of anyone following. Luna's training made her an invaluable early warning system. The dog's subtle changes in posture told Maya more about their surroundings than her own senses ever could. As they approached the final corner, Luna's body went rigid. Maya immediately pressed herself into a doorway, heart hammering. A black SUV with tinted windows sat across from the coffee shop, its engine running. Through the shop's large windows, she could see Sarah at their usual table, nervously checking her phone. Maya's mind raced. Was it a trap? Had someone gotten to Sarah, or was the SUV unrelated surveillance? The puppies shifted restlessly against her chest, sensing her anxiety. One let out a tiny whimper. Then she saw him. A man in a dark suit standing in the alley beside the coffee shop, speaking quietly into a radio. His stance, the way he scanned the street, everything about him screamed law enforcement. But which side was he on? Luna tugged gently at her sleeve, then looked pointedly down the street. Following the dog's gaze, Maya spotted another SUV parked 2 blocks down, positioned to block any escape route. They were walking into a carefully orchestrated net. Maya's phone buzzed. Sarah's number, but the message made her blood run cold. "Help me. They know everything. Get out now." Without hesitation, Maya turned and began walking rapidly in the opposite direction, keeping to the shadows between buildings. Luna matched her pace perfectly, occasionally glancing back to check for pursuit. They'd gone 3 blocks when Maya heard the distant sound of car doors slamming and engines revving. She broke into a run. The alleyways became a blur as Maya navigated by instinct and Luna's guidance. The puppies bounced against her chest with each stride, but she held them tight, whispering apologies for the rough ride. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit grew louder, footsteps echoing off brick walls, radio chatter, the screech of tires on asphalt. Luna suddenly veered left into a narrow passage Maya hadn't noticed. It was barely wide enough for her shoulders, squeezing between 2 old brownstones. They emerged into a small courtyard filled with overgrown gardens and forgotten sculptures. Maya paused, gasping for breath. Her ribs ached where the puppy's carrier pressed against her. Luna was already moving again, nose to the ground, following some invisible trail toward a gap in the far wall. "Where are you taking us, girl?" Maya panted. The gap led to a storm drain, wide enough for them to crawl through. Maya hesitated. Going underground felt like trapping themselves, but the sound of approaching voices made the decision for her. She squeezed through the opening, Luna right behind her. The drainage tunnel was dry and surprisingly clean, clearly unused for years. Maya pulled out her phone's flashlight, creating a small bubble of illumination in the darkness. They crawled for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, until Luna stopped at a junction where several tunnels met. In the sudden silence, Maya could hear her own heartbeat and the soft breathing of the puppies. They were safe for the moment, but Sarah was in trouble, and the evidence that could expose Morrison's killers was still trapped on that flash drive. Maya looked down at Luna's intelligent brown eyes, then at the three tiny faces peering out from the carrier. Somehow, this makeshift family had become the last hope for justice. The abandoned subway tunnels stretched endlessly into darkness, lit only by Maya's dying flashlight. The puppies whimpered in their carrier as she navigated the uneven ground, each step echoing despite her efforts to move quietly. Behind her, Coda's breathing was labored but steady. The medication Dr. Chen had given them was helping, but the mother dog needed proper rest. "Just a little further," Maya whispered, more to herself than the animals. The tunnel junction ahead would lead to the old maintenance room Tommy had told her about, a place forgotten by the city, but perfect for hiding. Her phone buzzed. Another text from Detective Harrison. "They're expanding the search. Need to meet tonight. Trust me." Trust. The word felt foreign now. 3 days had passed since the warehouse shooting, and every news report painted her as either a victim or an accomplice. The truth, as always, lay somewhere in between. The maintenance room was exactly as Tommy described, a concrete box with rusted pipes and a single working electrical outlet. Maya set down the carrier and helped Coda settle onto the blankets she'd salvaged. The mother dog's eyes reflected pain but also fierce determination. She wouldn't abandon her puppies, just as Maya wouldn't abandon them. As Maya arranged their meager supplies, she replayed Detective Harrison's words from their last conversation. Officer Santos left more than just a journal. He had insurance, evidence, stored where only someone who really knew the dogs would find it. The puppies tumbled over each other, their play growing more coordinated each day. Maya watched the smallest one, the female she'd named Hope, nose around Coda's collar for the 100th time. The collar that had survived everything, the shooting, Santos's death, the warehouse fire. Maya's hands trembled as she examined the collar more closely. Heavy-duty leather, reinforced stitching, but there, along the inner edge where the leather folded, a barely visible seam that didn't match the rest. Her fingernail caught the edge and lifted slightly. "Oh my God," she breathed. Hidden between layers of leather was a micro SD card, so small it was almost invisible. Santos had been clever. Who would think to thoroughly examine a canine's collar? Maya's heart pounded as she carefully extracted the tiny device. Her phone rang. Unknown number. "Don't answer it," said a voice from the tunnel entrance. Maya spun around to find Detective Harrison emerging from the shadows, his service weapon drawn but pointed down. "They're tracking your phone. We need to disable it now. How did you find me?" "Same way Santos trained Coda. I followed my nose. Well, more like I followed the scent of the antibiotics Dr. Chen gave you." Her clinic was being watched. Harrison approached slowly, hands visible. "Maya, I know you don't trust me, but we're running out of time. Captain Morrison's been reassigned, and they're bringing in someone from Internal Affairs tomorrow, someone who's definitely compromised." Maya clutched the SD card. "What's on here?" "Proof. Financial records, recorded conversations, evidence that goes back 5 years. Santos was building a case against a network of cops, judges, and city officials who've been taking money from the Kozlov organization." Harrison's voice was grim. Your dog and her handler stumbled onto something that could bring down half the police department. The puppies sensed the tension, huddling closer to their mother. Coda raised her head, alert despite her injuries. "Why should I believe you?" Maya asked. Harrison holstered his weapon and reached into his jacket slowly, producing a worn photograph. "Because Santos was my partner before he went undercover. Because I've been feeding him information for months, trying to help him build this case. And because they killed him when they found out." Maya took the photograph. It showed two young officers, Santos and a younger Harrison, standing beside Coda as a puppy. The back was inscribed, "To the only cop I trust. Keep her safe if something happens to me. Joe." "He gave me that 6 months ago," Harrison said quietly. "I've been looking for you and Coda ever since the shooting. Not to arrest you, to protect you." A distant sound echoed through the tunnel, voices, coordinated movement. Harrison's radio crackled. "They've found the tunnel," he said, grabbing Maya's arm. "There's another way out, but we need to move now." Maya scooped up the puppies while Harrison helped Coda to her feet. The mother dog was weak but determined, following Maya's lead as they headed deeper into the tunnel system. "There's a service ladder about 200 yards ahead," Harrison whispered, leading with his flashlight. "It comes up in the basement of an abandoned office building. I have a car waiting." Behind them, the voices grew louder. Flashlight beams swept the tunnel walls. Maya pressed the SD card into her pocket, feeling its weight like a promise. Santos had died protecting these secrets, and now she carried the burden of deciding what to do with them. The puppies in her arms represented more than just innocent lives. They were living proof of their father's sacrifice and their mother's courage. As they reached the ladder, Maya looked back one last time at the darkness pursuing them. Tomorrow, she would have to choose between running forever and standing to fight. Tonight, they just had to survive. Maya crouched behind the rusted dumpster, her heart hammering against her ribs as footsteps echoed through the alley. The manila envelope felt like it was burning through her jacket pocket, its contents heavy with the weight of Detective Rodriguez's final investigation. Luna pressed against her side, the German shepherd's muscles coiled and ready, while the three puppies huddled in the makeshift carrier at Maya's feet. The footsteps stopped. Maya held her breath, counting the seconds that stretched like hours. Through a gap in the dumpster's side, she could see polished black shoes and the hem of an expensive suit. Not the boots of a regular patrol officer, this was someone higher up the food chain. "I know you're here," a smooth voice called out. "Commissioner Hayes." Maya recognized the voice from the news clips she'd watched on library computers. "Miss Chen, isn't it? Or do you prefer to go by your street name these days?" Maya's blood turned to ice. He knew her real name. Somehow, despite all her efforts to stay invisible, they'd tracked her identity. She thought of the cash withdrawals Rodriguez had made, the careful paper trail he'd left behind. Had he known this moment would come? "You have something that belongs to the department," Hayes continued, his voice echoing off the brick walls. "That dog and her offspring are city property. Valuable property, I might add." Luna's lip curled back in a silent snarl. The dog remembered this voice, Maya realized. She'd heard it before, in context that had made her handler tense and wary. "But I'm a reasonable man," Hayes said, taking a few steps closer. "Return what you've taken, and we can discuss a generous relocation package. Somewhere warm, perhaps. Arizona has lovely weather this time of year." The threat was clear beneath the pleasant words. Maya's hand found Luna's head, drawing strength from the dog's unwavering loyalty. She thought of Detective Rodriguez bleeding out in that warehouse, whispering his final words about doing the right thing. She thought of the evidence in the envelope, bank records, surveillance photos, recorded conversations that painted a picture of corruption stretching from street-level drug operations all the way to the commissioner's office. A second set of footsteps joined the first. "Sir, we've checked the other exits. She's definitely in here somewhere." Maya recognized that voice too. Sergeant Morrison, one of the names from Rodriguez's files. The web of corruption ran deeper than she'd imagined. tentacles reaching into every level of the department. "Search every inch," Hayes ordered, "and remember, we need her alive. Dead witnesses can't recant their testimony." The footsteps split up, one set moving toward the fire escape, the other heading toward the row of dumpsters. Maya's mind raced through her options. The alley was a dead end, boxed in on three sides by buildings that stretched up like canyon walls. The only way out was past Hayes and his men. One of the puppies whimpered softly, and Maya quickly pressed her hand over the carrier's mesh opening. The sound was barely audible, but Luna's ears pricked forward in response. The adult dog was looking toward the far end of the alley, where a narrow service tunnel connected to the building's basement access. Maya followed Luna's gaze and saw it, a way out that Rodriguez must have scouted during his surveillance. The detective had been thorough in his preparations, leaving breadcrumbs for whoever came after him. She gathered the puppy carrier and began inching toward the tunnel entrance, Luna padding silently beside her. "Commissioner," Morrison's voice called from near the fire escape. "Found fresh scratches on the ladder. Looks like someone climbed up recently." "Check the roof," Hayes snapped, "and call for backup. I want every building in a 3-block radius sealed." Maya reached the tunnel entrance and peered into the darkness. It was barely wide enough for a person to crawl through, but it would have to do. She pushed the puppy carrier ahead of her and squeezed into the confined space, Luna following close behind. The tunnel was a maze of service pipes and electrical conduits, thick with dust and the smell of years of neglect. Maya's pregnant belly made the crawl difficult, and she had to pause frequently to catch her breath. Behind her, she could hear Luna's claws scraping against the concrete as the dog navigated the tight space. After what felt like an eternity, they emerged into the basement of the adjacent building. Maya found herself in a storage room filled with old office furniture and forgotten files. A weak light filtered through a small window near the ceiling, and she could see a stairway leading up to street level. She gathered the puppies and climbed the stairs, Luna at her side. They emerged into the lobby of an abandoned office building, its windows boarded up and its floors littered with debris. Through a gap in the plywood covering one window, Maya could see police cars surrounding the building they'd just escaped. But they weren't safe yet. Hayes knew who she was now, which meant nowhere in the city would be secure for long. She needed to get the evidence to someone she could trust, someone outside the reach of the commissioner's influence. Maya pulled out the burner phone Rodriguez had given her and dialed the number he'd made her memorize. The warehouse district felt different in the pre-dawn darkness, shadows stretching like fingers between the abandoned buildings. Maya clutched the carrier containing 3 of the puppies while Rex padded silently beside her, the 4th puppy, Echo, riding in a makeshift sling across her chest. Detective Rodriguez had insisted on splitting them up as a precaution, and the weight of that decision pressed against her ribs with each breath. 2 blocks ahead, Rodriguez whispered into her radio, his voice barely audible even in the stillness. Maya caught fragments of the response through his earpiece, something about positions and backup units holding at the perimeter. Her stomach churned, but not from hunger this time. After weeks of running, of looking over her shoulder, they were finally making their stand. The meeting point was an old freight office that Rodriguez's contact had chosen, supposedly neutral ground. But Maya had learned that nowhere was truly neutral when corruption ran this deep. She thought of Dr. Sarah Chen, probably sleeping peacefully in her suburban home, unaware that the evidence she'd helped uncover was about to be put to the ultimate test. "You sure about this?" Maya asked for the 10th time, adjusting Echo's weight against her chest. The puppy stirred but didn't wake, his tiny heartbeat steady against hers. Rodriguez stopped walking and turned to face her. In the dim light filtering from a distant street lamp, his expression was grim but determined. "Maya, I've been a cop for 15 years. I've seen good officers die and bad ones get promoted. But this," he gestured toward the carrier of puppies, "this is bigger than anything I've encountered. If we don't act now, Marcus Chen's death means nothing, and these corrupt bastards keep destroying lives." The mention of Officer Chen sent a familiar ache through Maya's chest. She'd never known the man, but his dog had become her salvation and his hidden evidence had become her burden. Rex seemed to sense her distress, pressing closer against her leg as they resumed walking. The freight office loomed ahead, its broken windows like dead eyes staring into the night. Rodriguez's contact was supposed to be FBI agent Sarah Morrison, someone he claimed had been investigating the conspiracy from the federal level. But trust felt like a luxury Maya couldn't afford anymore. "Movement at 3 o'clock, Rodriguez murmured, his hand instinctively moving toward his weapon. Maya's pulse quickened as she spotted a figure emerging from behind a rusted shipping container. The silhouette was wrong. Too tall, too broad to be the agent they were expecting. "That's not Morrison," Maya whispered, already backing away, but Rodriguez grabbed her arm. "Wait, let's see what we're dealing with." 3 more figures materialized from the shadows, moving with practiced precision that screamed law enforcement or military. Maya's mouth went dry as she recognized the tactical formation they'd learned to fear during their weeks on the run. "Rodriguez?" a voice called out across the empty lot. "Bring the woman and the animals forward." Slowly. Maya's legs felt like water. This wasn't a handoff of evidence to friendly federal agents. This was the trap she'd been dreading, the moment when their luck finally ran out. But as fear threatened to paralyze her, something else stirred in her chest. Anger. Anger at being hunted like an animal, at sleeping in abandoned buildings while pregnant, at watching Rex grieve for his fallen partner while corrupt cops tried to erase his memory. "The phone," she whispered urgently to Rodriguez. "Dr. Chen's backup plan." Rodriguez's eyes widened as he remembered. Before they'd left the veterinary clinic, Dr. Chen had insisted on one final precaution: uploading all their evidence to a cloud server with a dead man's switch. If Maya didn't check in every 12 hours, the files would automatically upload to every major news outlet and FBI field office in the country. "Smart woman," Rodriguez breathed, then raised his voice to address their adversaries. "You've got about 10 minutes before this whole thing goes public, whether we cooperate or not." The lead figure stepped forward, and Maya's blood turned to ice as she recognized Captain Williams from the news footage Rodriguez had shown her weeks ago, the man who'd given Officer Chen's eulogy while knowing exactly who had killed him. "Miss Santos," Williams called out, his voice carrying across the distance like a death sentence. "You've caused us considerable trouble, but trouble has a way of disappearing in places like this." Rex growled low in his throat, the sound vibrating with barely contained fury. The dog had recognized something too, maybe a scent, maybe just the predatory nature of the men surrounding them. Echo whimpered against Maya's chest, and she realized with crystal clarity that she wasn't just fighting for justice anymore. She was fighting for the future these innocent animals deserved, for the truth that Officer Chen had died protecting, and for the chance to give her unborn child a world where corruption didn't triumph through violence. Rodriguez was already moving, pulling her toward an escape route he must have scouted earlier. But Maya knew they were surrounded, and running was no longer an option. The warehouse felt smaller with 6 federal agents moving through it, their tactical gear creating sharp silhouettes against the early morning light, filtering through broken windows. Maya watched from the corner where she'd insisted on staying, Zeus pressed against her legs while the puppies huddled in their carrier behind stacked crates. Agent Rodriguez finished examining the evidence laptop, her expression grim. "This is bigger than we anticipated," she said quietly to her team leader, though Maya caught every word. "The financial records alone implicate 2 chiefs of police, a federal prosecutor, and at least 4 city council members." Maya's hands trembled as she stroked Zeus's head. 3 days had passed since she'd made the call that brought the FBI to their hideout. 3 days of sleepless nights wondering if she'd signed their death warrant or finally found salvation. The answer seemed to shift with every shadow that moved past the windows. "Ma'am, we need to discuss your options," Agent Rodriguez approached, her voice gentle but urgent. "The subjects named in Detective Morrison's files have been under surveillance since we verified the initial intelligence. 2 of them have already attempted to flee the jurisdiction." "What does that mean for us?" Maya asked, though Zeus's sudden alertness to a sound outside made her heart race. "It means they know someone has the evidence. Our sources indicate they've hired private contractors to locate you and the dog." Rodriguez knelt beside Maya, her eyes serious. "We can offer protective custody, but given the level of law enforcement corruption we're dealing with, it would mean complete relocation. New identities, permanent separation from anyone you've known." Maya looked down at the puppies, now 8 weeks old and beginning to show distinct personalities. Athena, the largest female, had inherited her mother's intelligence and protective instincts. Apollo, smaller but fearless, reminded Maya painfully of the courage that had gotten Detective Morrison killed. The thought of these innocent lives being upended because of human greed made her stomach churn. "There's another option," Rodriguez continued, reading the conflict in Maya's face. "We use you as bait." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Maya felt Zeus tense, as if the dog understood the gravity of what was being proposed. "The subjects don't know exactly what evidence Morrison left behind," Rodriguez explained. "They only know it exists and that you have access to it. If we stage a meeting, make them believe you're willing to negotiate. They'll try to kill me the moment they see me," Maya interrupted. "Not if they think you have something they need, something that only you can access." Rodriguez pulled out her phone, showing Maya a photograph of a safety deposit box key. Morrison was smart. The laptop evidence was just the beginning. "This key leads to physical documents, recorded conversations, financial records that could put these people away for life." Maya stared at the small silver key, remembering how Zeus had led her to Morrison's hidden cache. The dog had known exactly where to look, trained to find what his handler had desperately hidden before his death. "The real question," Rodriguez said, "is whether you're prepared to see this through, because once we make our move, there's no going back. These people will either be behind bars or dead, and if we fail—" A sharp whistle from one of the agents near the window cut through the conversation. Rodriguez immediately signaled for silence, her hand moving to her weapon. Maya's blood turned to ice as she heard the sound of approaching vehicles, their engines cutting through the morning stillness. "How many exits?" Rodriguez whispered urgently to her team. "3, but they're covering the main approaches," came the terse response. Maya gathered the puppies quickly, her movements automatic despite her fear. Zeus stood at her side, hackles raised but silent, his training overriding his protective instincts. The dog looked at her with those intelligent brown eyes, and Maya saw something that made her decision crystal clear. Morrison had died protecting the truth. Zeus had spent weeks guarding that truth, even as bullets flew around them. These puppies represented a future free from the corruption that had destroyed their father and their handler. Running now would mean that sacrifice meant nothing. "I'll do it," Maya said quietly, surprising herself with the steadiness of her voice. "I'll be your bait." Rodriguez nodded grimly, then spoke quickly into her radio, coordinating their escape route. As they moved toward the back exit, Maya caught sight of black SUVs surrounding the warehouse, professional, organized, and deadly serious about silencing the woman who held their secrets. But they had underestimated what she was willing to sacrifice for justice. As they slipped through the rear door into the maze of abandoned industrial buildings, Maya made a silent promise to Morrison's memory and to the innocent lives depending on her courage. The final confrontation was coming, and she intended to be ready. The warehouse smelled of rust and decades of neglect, but Maya had never felt safer. 3 days had passed since their desperate flight from the safe house, and Detective Chen's network had proven more extensive than she'd imagined. The abandoned building sat on the outskirts of the industrial district, its broken windows boarded up, its existence forgotten by city planners and criminals alike. Maya watched Storm pace near the entrance, her ears constantly swiveling toward every sound from the street beyond. The German shepherd hadn't relaxed since they'd arrived, as if she sensed that their sanctuary was temporary at best. The puppies, now growing bold and curious, explored their makeshift den with increasing confidence, their tiny paws clicking against the concrete floor. "We can't stay here much longer," Chen said, approaching with 2 steaming cups of coffee from the portable camp stove they'd set up in the corner. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and stubble covered his usually clean-shaven face. My sources say Commissioner Walsh has officially labeled you a person of interest in the bombing. They're spinning it as if you were working with whoever killed Jake. Maya's hands tightened around the warm cup. How can they possibly? Because they control the narrative, Chen interrupted gently. And desperate people do desperate things. The recording you found has them cornered, but cornered animals are the most dangerous. Through the grimy skylight above, afternoon sun cast long shadows across their temporary shelter. Maya had spent the morning transcribing every word from Jake's hidden recording, her handwriting growing shakier as the full scope of the conspiracy became clear. Drug money laundered through police evidence rooms, high-ranking officers paid to redirect investigations, witnesses who disappeared before they could testify. There's something else, Chen continued, pulling out his phone. I've been analyzing the financial records Jake gathered. The payments don't just go to street cops or even captains. This reaches into the district attorney's office, maybe higher. Storm suddenly stiffened, a low growl rumbling in her chest. The puppies immediately scrambled toward Maya, their instincts already honed by weeks of danger. Chen drew his weapon in one fluid motion, moving toward the barricaded entrance. 3 vehicles, he whispered, peering through a gap in the boards. Black SUVs. They found us. Maya's mind raced as she gathered the puppies, their warm bodies trembling against her chest. How had they been tracked? Chen had been so careful, using only trusted contacts, avoiding electronic communications. Unless your phone, she breathed. When you called your contact this morning, Chen's face went ashen. Martinez. I trusted him for 8 years. The sound of car doors slamming echoed through the warehouse. Storm positioned herself between Maya and the entrance, every muscle coiled for action. Outside, voices called orders in hushed tones, the practiced coordination of a tactical team. Is there another way out? Maya asked, already knowing the answer from Chen's expression. Fire escape on the east side, but it's rusted through. Won't hold our weight. Footsteps crunched on broken glass outside the main entrance. Maya looked down at the puppies in her arms, then at Storm's fierce golden eyes. These innocent animals had become pawns in a game that stretched back months, maybe years. Jake had died protecting the truth, and now that truth lived in the recording hidden in her backpack and in whatever Storm had witnessed that terrible night. They want the evidence, Maya said quietly. What if we give it to them? Chen stared at her. Maya, no. That recording is the only thing keeping us alive. Once they have it, not the real one. Maya's mind was working furiously now, the same quick thinking that had kept her alive on the streets for months. You made copies, right? Understanding dawned in Chen's eyes. The decoy. But how do we... A voice boomed from outside, electronically amplified. This is Commissioner Walsh. We know you're in there. Come out peacefully and no one gets hurt. Maya almost laughed at the absurdity. Walsh's definition of peaceful had already included bombing safe houses and murdering police officers. Storm's growl deepened as the warehouse's main door shook under heavy impacts. They were coming in, whether invited or not. Maya made her decision. Take the real recording, she told Chen, pressing the device into his hands. Get it to someone who can't be bought. A journalist, the FBI, anyone outside their reach. What about you? Storm and I are going to walk out that door. We're going to surrender. Maya saw Chen's protest forming and cut him off. With the fake recording. Let them think they've won while you get the truth to safety. The warehouse door splintered. Storm barked once, sharp and commanding, as if she understood the plan. Maya kissed each puppy's fuzzy head, then placed them gently in the makeshift bed they'd created from old blankets. Take care of them, she whispered to Chen. They're the future Jake died protecting. Then she stood, raised her hands above her head, and walked toward whatever waited beyond the broken door. The abandoned warehouse felt different now, charged with an electricity that made Maya's skin crawl. She pressed herself against the cold concrete wall, listening to the approaching footsteps echo through the cavernous space. In her arms, she clutched the smallest puppy while the others huddled behind a stack of rotting pallets with their mother. "I know you're in here, Maya," Detective Rodriguez's voice carried across the darkness, but something in his tone had shifted. Gone was the careful professionalism she'd grown to trust. "We found the recordings, all of them." Her heart hammered against her ribs. The flash drive Jake had died protecting was supposed to be their ace, their proof of Commissioner Hayes's involvement in the evidence tampering that had cost dozens of lives. Instead, it seemed to have painted a target on all their backs. "Just come out and we can talk about this," Rodriguez continued, his footsteps growing closer. "You don't understand what you've stumbled into." But Maya understood perfectly. The recordings hadn't just implicated Hayes, they'd revealed a network that stretched deeper than anyone imagined. Police captains, district attorneys, even federal agents, all profiting from suppressed investigations while drugs flooded the streets and bodies piled up in morgues. A second set of footsteps joined Rodriguez. Maya caught her breath as she recognized the heavy tread of Hayes himself. The man who'd ordered Jake's death was here, in person, which meant they weren't planning to let her walk away. "The girl's become a liability," Hayes's gravelly voice cut through the shadows. "And that damn dog has caused enough trouble." Maya's grip tightened on the puppy as fury blazed through her. These men spoke about lives, about Jake's life, about her life, about innocent animals, as if they were nothing more than accounting problems to be solved. "There has to be another way," Rodriguez said, though his words lacked conviction. "She's just a kid trying to survive." "She's a witness who can destroy everything we've built," Hayes snapped. "Don't go soft on me now, Rodriguez. You knew what this job required when you took our money." The betrayal hit Maya like a physical blow. Rodriguez had been feeding Hayes information all along, probably since the moment she'd first approached him for help. Every step they'd taken, every plan they'd made, Hayes had known about it. From their hiding spot, the mother dog let out a low growl that seemed to vibrate through the concrete floor. Maya saw her magnificent head rise above the pallets, ears pricked forward, muscles coiled for action. Even injured and protective of her puppies, the K9 was preparing to fight. "Did you hear that?" Hayes whispered. The beam of a flashlight swept across the warehouse, dancing over broken windows and graffitied walls. Maya held her breath as it passed just inches from her position, then moved on. "Look, we grab the girl, destroy the evidence, and make this whole thing disappear," Hayes continued. "The dogs too. Can't risk them being traced back to Jake." Something cold and sharp crystallized in Maya's chest. She thought about the past months, how these puppies had given her purpose when she had nothing, how their mother had chosen to trust her despite every reason not to, how Jake had died trying to protect the truth. She wasn't running anymore. Setting the puppy down gently with its siblings, Maya pulled out her phone. The screen glowed briefly as she activated the live streaming app she'd downloaded days ago, just in case. Her followers were few, mostly other homeless individuals and animal lovers who'd followed her journey with the dogs, but it was enough. "This is Maya," she whispered into the phone, keeping her voice barely audible. "I'm about to show you who really killed Officer Jake Morrison and why." She crept toward the edge of the pallets, phone camera pointed toward the two men now standing under a shaft of moonlight streaming through a broken skylight. Both were clearly visible, their faces illuminated as they discussed the details of covering up their crimes. "The accident report was perfect," Hayes was saying. "No one questioned that Morrison lost control of his vehicle. But then that surveillance footage turned up and everything started unraveling." "What surveillance footage?" Rodriguez asked. "From the gas station, across from where we staged the crash. Morrison was already dead when his car went off the road. Bullet wound to the head, close range." Hayes chuckled darkly. "I handled it personally." Maya's hand shook as she held the phone steady, watching the view count climb slowly but steadily. 12 viewers, then 23, then 47. Someone in the chat was typing frantically about calling the FBI. The mother dog appeared beside her suddenly, moving with silent grace despite her injuries. Her dark eyes met Maya's, and in that moment they understood each other completely. They were both mothers now, both protectors, and they weren't backing down. Hayes's radio crackled to life. A voice Maya didn't recognize said, "Sir, we have a problem. Someone's broadcasting live from the warehouse." Maya's hands trembled as she held the encrypted files that had cost so many lives. The abandoned warehouse echoed with the soft whimpering of the puppies huddled against Duchess, who remained alert despite her exhaustion. 3 days had passed since Detective Chen's death, and Maya knew their sanctuary was compromised. The USB drive felt impossibly heavy in her palm. Everything Officer Rodriguez had died protecting, everything Detective Chen had sacrificed herself for, was contained in these digital records. Financial transactions linking Police Commissioner Bradley to the Kozlov crime family. Evidence of evidence tampering. Murder disguised as line-of-duty deaths. A text message from Sarah illuminated Maya's phone. "Safe house compromised. They know about the warehouse. Run." Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. She gathered the puppies into the carrier while Duchess stood, her police training evident in every measured movement. Even wounded, the German shepherd positioned herself between Maya and the warehouse entrance. Outside, the pre-dawn darkness provided little comfort. Maya had memorized 3 escape routes, but with Commissioner Bradley's resources, nowhere felt truly safe. She needed to reach Marcus Williams, the FBI agent Chen had contacted before her death. He was their only remaining ally with the authority to act on the evidence. The abandoned subway tunnel Sarah had mentioned lay 6 blocks away. Maya moved through back alleys, the puppy carrier cutting into her shoulder. Her pregnancy made every step more labored, but adrenaline pushed her forward. Duchess limped alongside, her protective instincts overriding her pain. Footsteps echoed behind them. Maya ducked into a loading dock, pressing herself against cold concrete. 2 figures emerged from the shadows, speaking in low voices she recognized with dread. Detective Morrison and his partner, both on Bradley's payroll according to the files. "Chen couldn't have gotten far with the evidence," Morrison muttered. "The homeless woman's our only lead. Bradley wants this finished tonight. No witnesses, no loose ends." Maya held her breath as they passed. The puppies sensed her fear and remained silent, their small bodies warm against her chest. Duchess's ears were pinned forward, every muscle coiled for action despite her injuries. When the corrupt officers disappeared around the corner, Maya resumed her desperate flight. The subway entrance loomed ahead, partially concealed by construction barriers. She descended into darkness, following Sarah's directions toward an abandoned platform. The tunnels reeked of rust and decay. Maya's phone flashlight cut through the gloom, illuminating graffitied walls and scattered debris. The puppies whined softly, overwhelmed by the unfamiliar smells and sounds. "This way." Sarah's voice emerged from the shadows. Maya nearly sobbed with relief as her friend appeared, leading them deeper into the tunnel system. "Marcus is waiting. He flew in from Chicago the moment he learned about Chen." They reached a maintenance room where Agent Williams sat hunched over a laptop. He looked up as they entered, his expression grim but determined. Maya recognized the weight of purpose in his eyes, the same resolve she'd seen in Chen before her death. "Detective Chen sent me preliminary information before she was killed," Williams said without preamble. "But we need the complete files to build a case that'll stick." Maya handed over the USB drive. "How many people are involved?" Williams inserted the drive, his fingers flying across the keyboard. "More than we initially suspected. This conspiracy reaches into the mayor's office, the district attorney's office, even federal agencies." Chen stumbled onto something massive. The files appeared on screen, documenting years of corruption, protection payments from the Kozlov family, evidence destroyed in high-profile cases, witnesses who died in suspicious accidents. Maya watched Williams's expression darken as he absorbed the scope of Bradley's network. "We can use this," he said finally, "but going public means painting targets on all our backs. Bradley won't hesitate to eliminate anyone who threatens his operation. Maya looked down at the puppies, thinking of their mother's sacrifice and Rodriguez's death. These innocent lives had become symbols of something larger than survival. They represented the choice between complicity and courage. "What about protection?" Sarah asked. "Maya's pregnant, and these animals have been through enough trauma." Williams nodded. "Federal witness protection for Maya. The animals will need specialized care, but we can arrange that through contacts outside Bradley's influence." Maya's hand moved instinctively to her growing belly. Federal protection meant leaving behind everything familiar, starting over in a place where Commissioner Bradley's corruption couldn't reach. But it also meant justice for Rodriguez, for Chen, for every officer who died protecting the truth. Duchess nudged Maya's leg, her brown eyes filled with understanding. The dog had already lost one handler to this conspiracy. She seemed to recognize that their fight was far from over. "There's something else," Williams added quietly. "We've identified other K9 units that might be compromised. This network has been eliminating honest cops systematically for years." Maya realized the full magnitude of what they'd uncovered. This wasn't just about one corrupt commissioner or a single crime family. They'd exposed a cancer that had been growing in law enforcement for decades, spreading through networks of greed and violence. The choice before them would determine not just their own survival, but whether justice could prevail against institutional corruption. The rain drummed against the courthouse steps as Maya clutched the evidence folder to her chest, watching Captain Rodriguez emerge from the unmarked sedan. Behind her, Luna pressed close, the mother dog's warmth a steady comfort against the chaos of the past month. The three surviving puppies, Apollo, Athena, and Thor, had been placed with trusted K9 trainers, but Luna had chosen to stay with Maya through this final confrontation. "You came!" Rodriguez called out, his voice carrying over the storm. Water dripped from his cap as he approached, hands visible and empty. "I wasn't sure you would." Maya studied his face, searching for any hint of deception. The wire detective Chen had given her felt foreign against her skin, but the weight of Officer Jake Morrison's sacrifice demanded justice. "Your partner killed a good man," she said simply, "and he tried to kill me. Castellanos was never my partner in this." Rodriguez stopped 10 feet away, close enough to speak without shouting. Jake suspected there was corruption in the department, but he didn't know how deep it went. Neither did I, until I started investigating after his death. The folder grew heavy in Maya's hands. Inside lay copies of financial records, encrypted files Luna had somehow preserved on her collar's hidden drive, and witness statements from 3 other officers who had been silenced. Then why did Detective Castellanos have access to the case files? Why did he know exactly where to find me? Rodriguez's shoulders sagged. "Because I told him. God help me. I thought he was clean. I thought we were building a case together." He gestured toward the courthouse. "I've been feeding information to Internal Affairs for weeks, Maya. Half the department is under investigation now." Luna growled low, her instinct sharper than any human intuition. Maya felt the tension in the dog's muscles, the way her ears pricked forward. "She doesn't trust you," Maya observed. "Smart dog. Jake trained her well." Rodriguez's voice cracked slightly. "He was my best friend, Maya. We went through the academy together. He called me the night he died, said he had proof of something big. By the time I got to the warehouse, he was gone, and so was Luna." The rain intensified, turning the courthouse steps slick and treacherous. Maya thought of the homeless camp where this had all begun, of Officer Morrison's final moments protecting evidence that could expose years of police corruption tied to drug trafficking and money laundering. She thought of the nights she'd spent in abandoned buildings, Luna heavy with pregnancy, both of them running from shadows. "Prove it," she said finally. "You say you're one of the good ones? Then prove it." Rodriguez reached slowly into his jacket, producing his own folder. "Search warrants. Signed this morning. We're arresting Commissioner Walsh, 3 captains and 8 detectives within the hour, including what's left of Castellanos' crew." He stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. But we need that drive, Maya. Without Jake's evidence, half these charges won't stick. Maya's heart hammered as she weighed her options. Trust had become a foreign concept over the past month. Everyone who promised help had ultimately wanted something from her. Everyone except Luna, who had given her everything and asked for nothing in return. "Luna?" she whispered to the dog. "What do you think, girl?" The German shepherd's ears twitched, her dark eyes studying Rodriguez with the intensity that had made her a legendary K9 officer. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Luna's tail moved once. A small wag, barely visible but unmistakably present. Maya made her decision. She pulled the microdrive from the folder, Jake Morrison's final gift to justice. Officer Morrison believed in something bigger than himself, she said, extending the device toward Rodriguez. He died protecting people he'd never met from corruption he couldn't tolerate. Don't make his sacrifice meaningless. Rodriguez accepted the drive with reverence, closing his fingers around it like a sacred relic. "The department is setting up a victims' compensation fund," he said quietly, "for you and anyone else who was hurt by this conspiracy. It's not much, but—" "I don't want money," Maya interrupted. "I want Luna to receive the honors she deserves. And I want Jake Morrison's name cleared completely. He died a hero." "Done." Rodriguez pocketed the drive. "Maya, what you've done, the courage you've shown, Jake would be proud. You gave his life meaning." The rain began to slow as Rodriguez disappeared into the courthouse, carrying with him the evidence that would topple a conspiracy years in the making. Maya and Luna remained on the steps, watching the city lights blur through the storm, knowing that somewhere in the distance, 3 puppies were growing strong, carrying their mother's legacy of loyalty, courage, and unwavering dedication to protecting the innocent. They had found their way home.